So I just never know what's going to transpire in each and every session because each one person's different. But I'm just so in awe. Like, think about it, like going on these spiritual journeys, seeing, listening to things that are happening. I'll share one other one. This one's not in the book, but this is pretty miraculous and shows you that the amount of trust I have to have with God in order to do this work, because some things will come through to me that are so far out there that you think, should I say this? Right?
Hello, everybody. It is Pat here, and I am just like so excited about my interview that I'm doing today with Debra Martin. I've been reading her book, Proof of Miracles. She's going to talk about that today. And I just told her, I said, she's a miracle in the making, because I think every soul she touches, every person she touches on this physical plane absolutely has the ability to achieve miracles through her and her connection, her being a conduit with God and all of spirit. So welcome, Debra. I'm going to do a quick little introduction, but I just want to say hi.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so I want to get to my little intro, so you guys are all going to have to deal with me here. Okay, world-renowned healer and medium Debra Martin takes people to places that most people think are unattainable. Her inspirational life story, truly inspirational. I can't wait for you guys to read it and hear more about it. It demonstrates how experiences such as suicide, the loss of loved ones, divorce, and near-death experience transformed her into the healer and medium she is today. After being called on by God to a life of healing and giving much-needed hope to others, Debra has accepted her divine mission and has helped thousands worldwide heal spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And so she's going to talk about these stories. But one thing to know, that Debra is a lab certified research medium, which is fascinating because I really didn't know what that was until I read in her book. So her skills have actually been documented and tested through the scientific community, and most notably by Dr. Gary Schwartz. He's the author of the Afterlife Experiments, and Dr. Julie Beischel, director of the Windbridge Research Center, and she's been featured in numerous media outlets. And I will have everything here in the information below where you can reach her, but it's real easy. You can see more about her and learn more about her at www.goldenmiracles.com. So, Debra.
I know where to begin, right?
Well, I really want to begin like the certified research medium, because I think many people who will be listening probably have experienced going to a mediums in their communities and that type of thing. But you kind of go above and beyond, because you actually have been doing through lab experiments or whatever. Can you just explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. So when I first started hearing the voices again, I had the gift when I was 4, but I was scared of it, so I kind of pushed it aside. And when spirit feels you're ready, they'll come knocking on your door. So, and I had some near-death experiences that I speak about in this book to get me to that spot, right? But I reached out to Dr. Gary Schwartz, who was studying mediums at the Veritas Center. And now it's the Windbridge. Julie and Gary have kind of split, doing 2 different studies. And at that time, they were doing a quadruple blind experiment. And it's a very rigorous way of testing. There's no way of cheating, should I say. And that helped me. And why do I say that helped me is because I questioned it myself. Like, where's that information coming from? And who's that information coming from? And we probably all have that. Sometimes a thought pops in our mind and we wonder, is this real? Or that can't be happening to me. I'm not a medium. But so by getting tested, it really gave me the science and the background to say this is real. And so being certified shows others that I went through this testing to become a medium, really. And but it also gave me that background and that confidence to say I can go out and help others. Without that, I still think I question if I was good enough or is this real? And like I said, we all have the ability. So when I do reading sessions for people, I try to teach them their own little connection that spirit brings through so that they can learn, because it's not like they have to learn to do it for other people, but how can they be aware? How do they tune in? So that really was the foundation of what started everything.
Wow. Wow. That is so beautiful. And I know we have questions. We have some questions that I could be asking, but I'm one of these people that things will pop into my mind because spirit's like, okay, let's ask her this. So interestingly enough, I am an officiant for funerals and celebration of lives. And just yesterday, I did this one it was for a 31-year-old woman who died unexpectedly. And her family, the devastation beyond description, of course. And so that is one of the things that I kept talking to them about is as you get through that paralyzing part of grief and that fog that we spiritually and mentally need to go through just to help keep your sanity during this really hard time, is looking for the signs and finding the signs and seeing the signs, because she's so much surrounding all of you all the time. So how do you help people to do that?
So there's a couple different ways. I kind of ask spirit to come through, like how do you want to connect? So we're doing the session, spirit's talking and coming through, and then I just think it's very important that they learn how, or just have a little tool so that when they leave the session, the reading continues to give, and that they maybe won't need a medium next time because then they have that connection. So the loved one will come through with different signs, whether it's, I turn the TV on for you. Do you notice that you're having issues with electronics? Or I'm sending this hummingbird. Have you noticed it at your window trying to get your attention? Or, I leave feathers everywhere. One time I did this session for this woman, and the husband said, I'm going to leave white feathers. It was very specific, white feathers. And she was really skeptical. So her daughter's like, well, you have to believe this if it happens. So the next morning, her backyard was full, like snow of white feathers. And she's like, do you think that that's it? And I'm like, okay, at some point, then you have to believe, right? So I said, well, if there's a time where you question, like, okay, she said I could find a feather, and the feather was just right there when I walked out the door. Ask spirit to give it to you 2 more times during that day. So that if they give you that same sign 3 times, that's when I would say stop ignoring it and just enjoy it. And then there's times where information might come to you, like a thought, right? And it means nothing to you. And you go, I don't know why I thought that. It means nothing. And I said, well, put that in your sacred space, write it down, because later in the day it might make sense. And that's when spirit really gave you that message and is with you and guiding you and protecting you and loving you and being a part of everything that you do in life.
Wow, that makes so much sense. I'm going to just go back to yesterday. On Sunday, I met with she has 3 sisters, and I met with the 3 sisters. And when we left where we were meeting at the funeral home, one of the sisters went off to her car, and I hopped into my car, and I was getting ready to go. And all of a sudden, this beautiful monarch had just floated right in front of my window. So I get out of the car, and I'm like, there's a monarch that just flew away. There's a monarch. You need to know that. You need to know that she's going to come in so many different ways. And the sister just kind of looks at me. And then yesterday, after the funeral, same thing happened, and right in front of my window. And so I felt like it was their beloved sister who came and said, you did okay. You did pretty good with this ceremony. It's just what my sisters needed. Yeah.
thanking you. And, you know, you look at the monarchs as a celebration of life, right? Because it's a
Yeah.
transformation. So how beautiful is that?
Yeah. So, okay. So you have known about your gift since you were a little girl. Can you just share a little bit about when did that start and what did it look like for you?
Well, as a little girl, it always came to me at night. I think because they came at night is because they knew that I would be settled and that nothing else could interfere then. And so I lived in a two-story, so my bedroom was upstairs. My parents were always downstairs. My dad worked third shift. My mom was always watching either Doris Day or something late at night, right? And so a face would appear to me like right in front of me and come really close. And I would be like, okay, I kind of scared of it. Sometimes it would be look a little distorted. Sometimes I couldn't make it out. And I was like, what am I seeing? So I would kind of turn my head to the side and say, well, what's your name? And I might hear like Steve with an S, right? So then I try to carve the S in my dresser, my wooden dresser, and just take that time focusing on that and then focusing on them. And if they didn't go away, then I was the one that's always saying, Mom, Mom, can I come downstairs? I can't sleep. And it's like, no, Deborah, go to sleep, right? So I didn't know how to explain it. It wasn't something that was explainable to your parents. And what would they think, right? And so I just kind of pushed it away. I feared it. And I just was like, I don't want this. And I closed that door. And that's why I say with children, they may have the gift, just allow them to be free with whatever they have to say, accept it. Don't ask them a lot of questions, let it just come to you. And then also, when that happens, they'll feel safe in saying whatever they need to say. But if they close it off for a while, it'll always come back. It's like riding a bicycle. We always remember how to ride the bicycle. It's always within them. So it's not something that you have to say, oh my gosh, if we don't keep this going, then it's going to stop. It's not. In fact, I wrote a children's book called Me and My Angels for little kids, and they really love to hold that, like if they lost a mom or a grandma, and know that, wow, that's my angel there that's protecting me or with me, and to always let them know that they're not alone.
That is so beautiful. And I've heard that from other mediums and spiritual advisors that when they were young, it got a little frightening. Didn't know quite how to deal with it. It was a bit overwhelming. And so thankful that it does come back, that it doesn't go away, that it is sitting there and just waiting until probably the maturity to be able to handle it. Or in your case, you had some defining experiences in your life. So can we talk about your out of body near death experience that happened back in 2012?
Yes. Okay. So I've had major shifts in my life to get me to where I am today. I call them shifts because they change who you are, right? They hit you to the core. There's you can't deny what just took place. So back in 2012, I was really sick. It was actually in 2011. I was seeing lots of doctors at the Mayo Clinic, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I wasn't able to eat. I wasn't able to drink. I lost all ability to have bowel movements. And so I was debilitating. And at that quality of life that I was having, I I lost hope. And it's hard to think of that when you have four children, three of them were out of the house already, but I had a little girl that was in third grade. And to think, I just want to go. I'm ready. I just want to die. It gave me a perspective of what people are dealing with when they come to the end, that they know that their loved ones will be fine here, but their time is time to go. So I was asking, please take me, please take me. And one afternoon, I was in my bedroom, but now I never really left my bedroom because it was too painful even to walk. So all of a sudden, I saw these spiritual surgeons into my room, and they were wearing surgical uniforms. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, remember, I was already a medium, so I understood spirit. It wasn't something that scared me. And I thought, oh, well, maybe they're going to perform something on me that I'm going to be able to be healed. Well, as they stuck this rod down me and as they were going into my lower right side, maybe the pancreas area, it became very, very painful, almost like I was screaming in pain. And I'm like, I don't know if I can take this anymore. But I knew I couldn't say stop because I knew that they were there to do something. So I remember just closing my eyes and I took a deep breath in. And when I did, I came out of body. I just effortlessly was out. And I felt different. I wasn't feeling any pain and I felt detached. And I just started floating. And I'm like, oh, well, this feels good. So I thought that I was just staying in the room, right? That it was just present where I was. But I kept floating up, 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 and up. And so I just allowed that to happen. And I realized I really didn't have to breathe. And so as I was traveling up farther and farther and farther up, I finally came to this space where I stopped. And it felt like I was surrounded in clouds. Like I was just, this white light was so bright that you couldn't see anything else. It was like, like a stage light that is on your face. You can't see the audience, right? So I can't see anything else that's around me. And I'm like, this is interesting. I wasn't scared. I felt safe, but I didn't understand, like, now what, right? And all of a sudden in front of me, I saw this beam of light getting bigger and bigger and stronger, and it was coming closer and closer and closer and closer to me. And I saw this giant being that was wearing this beautiful white robe and put his arms out like this. And before I knew it, I was witnessing my body in this divine being that I call God in his hands. Now, why would I say that was God? Because there was a love at that instant moment that the connection was there that I remember. That just was within me. And, it makes me even want to cry now because it's undescribable, but it's the most intense love you can imagine. Whew. So anyway, I knew to follow him. So he's taking my body somewhere. And I put two and two together, like I'm following. So this must be my spirit, my soul, right? So I'm seeing him and he places my body on this beam. It looks like a white beam that's really long, almost like a balance beam, but it's just lit up in white. And he placed my body there. And so now I'm standing and I feel the presence standing right next to me. Next to the body was this glass coffin. It looked like the Cinderella glass coffin. And I thought, oh my, I want to go in there. That's beautiful. Can I just even try it out? Like, wow, look how beautiful that is. But I knew that if I did, I was making a choice. That means, the end of life. So I felt like an arm go around me to guide me into this space. And I said, why do we have to go in this space? It felt like a dome and you're walking almost like into a cave, right? But it's all lit up in light. And it's like, I'm taking you to this space because then no one in the universe can hear this. This is just between the two of us. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know what that meant. But when I'm communicating, I'm not communicating like I'm with you with my words. I'm communicating in my mind to mind. We're just communicating back and forth. So there would look like a table. I sat down at the table and there was this long, long list, this list, and I had no idea what it was. And God said, this is your lifespan contract. All of you have one. And I was like, that's interesting. Like I didn't put two and two together. And he's like, well, we can reverse this. You're on borrowed time. The time is now that you will pass, but we can reverse this on this day, 1/21/12. Look at the numbers. They're all reversible. And so is this. And I kind of said, I don't want to go back. Like, why would I want to go back? I'm sick. Why would I want to go back to that life when I'm feeling so wonderful in this life right here, which I called heaven? And so I asked, can I just go see my parents? Can I go see what heaven looks like? And I was told no, because I believe that if I really would have seen that, there was no question I would come back. So on that live contract, I didn't read all the fine line. There were certain words that were stuck out to me. One was health, and I asked God, well, Health, that means nothing. We could all say health, but health could mean that you're sick, right? What is the state of health? So here I'm questioning God. If I think back at that, like, how dare I? But I immediately saw the word change to healthy. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be healthy. Then joy. Okay, joy. Joy is good. I want joy. Empowerment. Empowerment's a good word. And prosperity. Oh, I like that word too. So I really didn't look at what that all meant and what it was going to mean later when I came back. So I did sign the contract, but God signed that contract too. So I knew that there was a reason he was signing, and he told me I was going to come back with a new mission and duty. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that there was something new that was going to transpire. So I said, "Can I just stay like a little longer?" And I was told no, that it was time to go back. So as I came back, I could feel myself like falling slowly, not where you would feel that fall like when you're in a dream, but just slowly, effortlessly. And I remember taking this gasp of air, kind of like if you were held underwater, right? And you're like trying to get up, and then you get up and you get that air. And consciously remember taking that breath and then saying, am I the same? What just happened? Am I the same Debra? So things took a while, took about 6 months, and I was starting to see myself being healed. And I questioned later, like, God, why didn't I find out what was wrong with me? Because it's really hard when you are dealing with a sickness and everybody else around you may not believe you, even though they see that, because they don't have a diagnosis, right? To say you have this. And that's what my former husband was saying. Like, well, if they can't find anything, why should I believe that there's anything wrong? Well, I'm like, how can you not? I'm down to 90 pounds, right? But I asked that question and I was told this very profound statement. Had you been labeled with a diagnosis, you would say, I have, or I had. It would be something that you would own. I don't want you to ever own this. It is now gone. And it made perfect sense, and I never asked it again. I just gave gratitude for it. Um, on that lifespan contract, I didn't look at everything, and probably because we do have free will. We can change our course. We can change things that will happen to us. So by signing the contract and becoming back as a healer and healing myself, I had to lose everything that was stable in my life. I looked at that as like, what? Why? I was happily married. Why would this happen? But I see it today as a blessing. You know, my former husband at the time, he honored me by telling me his truth. I can't do this walk. And I don't ever want you to be upset with me because I stopped you from doing your purpose. But when you're going through it, you're like, what? You know, you're not thinking that, like, how can you not? But today I do, so I wouldn't have one foot in and one foot out. So then I started doing healings. One of the most profound healings was interesting. This woman brought her dad in for a session, and he was a doctor himself, and he was very skeptical. And I don't want to know anything that's wrong with a person, right? And so I was able to see that he had cancer in the brain and cancer in the spine. And when I saw that, I have to go through the pain for spiritual surgeons to pull that out. And so it was very intense. Afterwards, he was just like, okay, that wasn't what I expected. All right, you know, we'll see. Within 5 days later, he was healed from Hodgkin's lymphoma of the brain and the spine. Yes, and they even did another spinal tap and a brain scan just to validate. And he said, I'll do one more, but you know, you can talk to my daughter. She set this up. You can ask her what happened because it was unexplainable. And that's the beauty of the miracles is they are unexplainable, but so undeniable when you see what's transpiring through me, around me, and to the client. I'm just in awe and gratitude for each and every one of them.
That is so beautiful. And um, as you know, I worked with the Grand Master of Qigong, and Qigong is a type of energy healing. And I would tell people, I saw people walk into the office or I talked to them on the phone, and miracles occur every day. Miracles are not just something that occurs to them or out there, or it happens daily when we open up our hearts and our minds to it. And especially when we have someone like you. And a lot of times we do need to have another person that can kind of step in and help be the surgeon, to help be the healer, even though we can heal ourselves, but to just get us to that place where we can maintain that health,
And
right?
that is so true. So we all have the ability to heal, and but yet it can be so stuck in our mind. We hear things like, you know, you're going to die. You know, you have this, and that's the power of those words. You have, you're going, right? So then having God come through these sessions, using my voice as his voice and saying these things to um, this person, this client that I don't know, but only God knows, that ignites that knowingness within them of what is transpiring, what's happening. The hardest thing that I have to deal with is, you know, I ask for a miracle for each and every person. That's my intention, right? But because I don't know what they're dealing with, because I don't know what's best for them, God, I put full control into God and allow him to use me as his instrument and vessel, and just allow him to orchestrate it. And then they will receive what they're supposed to at that time. And sometimes they're completely healed, sometimes instantaneously, sometimes it takes months, but sometimes they don't. That's the hardest part. Like sometimes they don't receive the miracle they are looking for, right? To get rid of the cancer or whatnot, but they might receive it in a different form, like a gift of time. Or there's a story in my book about Brenda and how she was dying of cancer, and she was relieved of feeling unworthy all her life. And so she even said to me, well, that was the greatest healing I could have asked for. And I'm thinking, huh? You know, I was thinking she'd want that, but she held that pain that was in her, and it freed her. And today, Brenda still comes through in spirit through so many mediums and speaks, and she's doing her work on the other side. But so that it comes in forms that we don't know, and that really shows me I'm not in charge, so I don't take the credit for it. And that's where my former husband would say, "Well, why you? And how come you're healing?" And I said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not. I'm just the conduit, right? This is my body. I'm tapping into a frequency, but I give all credit to God, because I couldn't do these or say, look at me, right?" But that's the whole reason of talking about this, is showing that this still does exist, and find that person that works for you. I mean, there's so many different types of healers, and there's also different types of doctors. I believe that, you know, use every tool you have in the toolbox. Some people think like, oh, I have to either be the healer spiritual side, or I have to be just the doctor side, and you can combine those.
Yes, everything is so complementary. I mean, that's why we have Western science. It's why we have Eastern medicine. That's why we have mediums and shamans and, that have gone for centuries and centuries and centuries before us. It is. And I love what you say. It so resonated, because some people would say to me, but so-and-so died even though they had that healing. And it's like, physically, but healing occurs on so many levels, as Brenda, the emotional level, or from a spiritual level, where people really open up their hearts and are able to be free to really embrace their transition. And I'm fortunate, as a registered nurse and someone who has been around death and dying since I was a little kid, I've held many hands and helped during that transition period with family and friends and patients. And it's such a beautiful thing when that peace really does come through and there isn't that fight. And I'm one too that I don't like to use the terms I'm fighting this, or I'm, battling that, because it isn't a war. It's loving everything about what we have within us and the experiences that we have.
Yes, I talk about that in my other book, and how if you embrace yourself with love, our bodies are magnificent. And yes, we might be frustrated because it's just not healing. My leg is always swollen. I can't find the answers. It's, causing me to slow down in life. And you're frustrated. Yes, we're all frustrated. But frustration causes resistance. And so it would be like a child that came up to you that was sick, right? Would you hug that child and say, oh, okay, let's go lay down on the couch. We'll nurture you, take care of you. Or you'd say, oh my gosh, how could you get sick right now? I have too much to do. And you get all mad. So it works like that. Hug yourself, hug your body, send love to those areas. And that's a good way to start healing yourself, is by seeing the gratitude that's around you. Surround yourself with love, but place love within your body by hugging it and hugging yourself. I don't know how many times I try to tell people, like, have you told yourself you love yourself today? That's kind of like, have you? Like that, oh, I love myself today. It's a different concept of saying it, because we say I love you to everybody else. But it's time to look in the mirror and see the masterpiece that God created each of us to be, and love it. Love who we are. So
I encourage people to actually truly look in the mirror and gaze into their own eyes, where there's a lot of fear for many to do that, but to just truly go up into a mirror and just gaze into your own eyes and tell yourself that you love. Yes. You love the person whose eyes you're peering into. And it's probably one of the most magnificent spiritual times of my life. And I do it fairly frequently, because we do forget. Sometimes we forget to love on ourselves. And I always tell people, you have to have a gallon in order to give a cup. You have to have your gallon filled, your heart absolutely filled with your own self-love, in order to be able to provide it for everybody else that we all work so hard to support in our lives. So
it's so true. So
yeah. You and I could probably go on for hours. Well, I know we could. We could probably go on for hours. Now,
I wanted to say something.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, talking about looking in the mirror, I can remember God taking someone on a spiritual journey, and we could talk about spiritual journeys. And they met, and he said, "I'm here to relieve all the shame that you hold." Okay, talk about looking in the mirror. And he said, "So if I am within you, my light's within you, that person is looking at God and shaming me. How would you feel if you were shaming God?" Think twice before, people shame someone. But it really made sense that this person was able to shed that shame, knowing that the shame that was put on that person was from the shame that that person was feeling that put it on that person. And so, yes, you can heal on so many levels, but I thought that was so profound. Like, look at who you're looking through the mirror, because not only are you looking at yourself, it's an image of the light and love of who you are that's within you.
Mm-hmm. That's soul. I mean, it is. The eyes are the window of the soul. Yes. And where does the soul come from? Of course, it's God.
It's beautiful.
That is so beautiful. Like I said, I think we could go on forever and ever, and I just want everybody to know we're going to be doing a second interview, but I just want to quickly, Proof of Miracles, will you just give an overview of the book as far as what do you go through in the book? I know that you share lots of different stories, and just give kind of a few-minute overview so people can grasp what's between the covers of this beautiful book.
Well, I get in detail of my experience on 12112, but then I worked with my clients to tell their stories, because I feel I can tell all the stories, but if you hear it firsthand of what they went through, whether it's a reading that I did or a healing, because readings are also, from mediumships, are also healing. And so that's part of a miracle as well. But if you read these stories, maybe one of those stories will relate to you, and then you will feel that shift within yourself, like, oh my gosh, I can understand what she was given, and I deserve that too. So the stories go anywhere from an emergency distant healing session where they call and say, oh, I need this done right away. And that's difficult because you've got one maybe on one parent saying, what are you doing? And the other parent going, it's the only thing I can hang on to, right? And that story is just beautiful in there. And then we touch on some hard stories, which is like suicide, and what that pain felt like, and how they were able to walk through that through a healing or a reading session. And then there are some stories with spiritual journeys where somebody had lost a loved one, so they're being healed for grief or anything in their body, right? Because I'm going to see it all. It's like taking your car into the shop. They're going to just look at everything to see what's going on. And so then I take them on a spiritual journey, and what that means is a vision will come to me. God will show me a vision. And this one was really interesting. So this was in person, as he was laying on the table, I was underneath the table, okay? So I said, are you ready? And I heard him in his mind say, well, what are we waiting for? So I said, oh, I just heard you say, what are you waiting for? So afterwards, he's like, oh my gosh, like she heard me, right? And so I said, I'll be with you. I'm going to stand with you. I'll be with you, observing, watching, and speaking. So we get to this space, and there's this beautiful tree, and God walks forward and brings his son. Now, his son had been murdered, so he didn't even know where his son was, how to find his son. He learned that he had drowned, but what did he go through? How the pain that the father was holding. So his son comes with the personality that he had, joking around, look at me, Dad, and would walk through him and go, oh, look, I went through you, really fun, uplifting connection. And then he gave him a hug. And he says he could feel his skeleton. He knew by the smell and the feel of that embrace that it was his son. But then his son took him to this space by the tree. And he said, look down. And he said, there's a raven here. I have a raven here by this tree, but you have one by your tree too. And so he said, I want you to, every year that I'm gone, take a knife and mark it into the tree. And I'm going to do the same here, so that when you come back, I'll bring you back to this tree and you will see that this really transpired. What's interesting is I was able to go to their house afterwards. His wife had just bought a raven and put it at the base of their tree. And so everything lined up, right? And he said it was his piece of heaven that day. And it's something he'll never forget, and changed him, right? He knew his son, and his son came through, which is in the book. I won't want to spoil it, but his son came through with words that only he, how do you want to say, held on to and worried and grieved over. And his son came through with those answers and released it all. So I just never know what's going to transpire in each and every session, because each one person's different. But I'm just so in awe. Like, think about it, like going on these spiritual journeys, seeing, listening to things that are happening. I'll share one other one. This one's not in the book, but this is pretty miraculous, and shows you that the amount of trust I have to have with God in order to do this work, because some things will come through to me that are so far out there that you think, should I say this, right? This one was with a girl that had a hernia, and I saw her sister come in the room, and I'm like, wow, they look a lot alike. And I thought, oh, you were a twin. And so I'm just saying this out loud, and then now I see them in the womb. I'm like, okay, where is this going? This is kind of weird. And so the sister says that we made a deal to come together, but I bailed on you last minute, so I didn't come. So you probably have the sense of always wanting to be a twin, or that you were a twin, but we were. And she was weeping, and she later said she went and talked to her mother and said, Mom, I had this session and this is what came through. Can you say anything to me about that? And she goes, oh, honey, I just didn't think this would serve you. But yes, there were 2 sacks and there was only 1 baby. And so who could make that up? That's what I say. Who could make this up? This kind of stuff is like thrown at me. I'm like, okay. But I have to trust all the words, just like in mediumship. They mean nothing to us, right? And it drops in and we have to say it. So in my sessions, I'm not only seeing and hearing and feeling, but I'm voicing it all. And that's the beauty of it, because people are all around the world. I don't do any in person anymore because I find it to be more real to them. For when they are resting in their sacred space, remember we talked about Brenda. Brenda was in her sacred space. I was having my session in mine, and the stories in this book. But I felt like I was going to throw up bile, and I kept saying, I'm going to throw up. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Hold on, right? So then when I send the MP3 to her, she listens to it, and she's like, I was throwing up bile the entire time.
Oh my God.
At that time. So that's what's fascinating, is what I'm feeling on my end, they might be feeling on their end. They might feel emotional where they're crying. They might feel energy moving. They might feel tingling, or they might feel nothing at all. Sometimes people fall asleep, but that too is medicine going in from the spiritual surgeons that's to sedate them. And some people say, well, can I be at work? What if I'm at work and that's the only time because of the time difference? I said, yeah, you can, because it will ignite when it's supposed to ignite. And then they can listen to it when they get home. But there's so much power behind the words, right? Because they're not mine. And it's still just so interesting. They last an hour and I'm just going blah, 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 the entire hour. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing. Mm-hmm.
That is just like, I wish, as a grief coach and working with people who are grieving and working with families that are looking for hope and healing and restoration in their lives, I wish I could send every single one of them to you. I'm going to definitely send them to you. I wish I could just like have you right there with me so that, because
That'd be fun.
Wouldn't it?
Yes.
Like we could do, yeah. That might, we'll think about that. We'll have to connect on that one and think how we might be able to do that. But it is just, yeah, we don't know what's beyond here. So many of us, and in the grips of desperation and despair and this deep grief, to have that glimmer of hope and knowing that there is more than that's right here. There's so much more, and you are that. You are this beacon of hope, this beacon of light. And yes, you're the conduit, but you are the beacon of light where people can come and just be enfolded into your absolute beauty of love, your deep love, and to be so open and honest and not hold back.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a trusting that whatever is coming out is meant to come out.
Right, you talk about that beam of light. That's what I see at the beginning of every session, is this beam of light come down, and it goes right into the solar plexus. It holds us here, and it connects me and my client and God together as one in that frequency. Mm-hmm. So God divined that frequency for me, this direct connection, and there hasn't been any that I can say, every time someone's receiving something, I don't question it. And I just give full control to God. And talk about hope. Remember, I didn't have hope before the 12112. And then when I came back, I took that breath. That was that light of hope that relit inside me. And the flame just had to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And by doing these sessions, like the man that had the Hodgkin's lymphoma, God shows me the power that he has and what's available to us here, to all of us here. And that some people will say, well, I'm not deserving, or why should I have that healing? I'm old and somebody else could use the healing. We're all deserving. We're all worthy of. and there's nothing too big or too small to heal, I'll go in and I'll be healing cancer, and I'll still see, oh, this person needs a root canal too. So it's like, you just don't know what's going to come through. But that beam of light is everything. It's the hope, it's the love, and talk about love. When God enters the healing room, oh, it's like this rush of chill goes through me, and I immediately start crying. And they'll feel it. They'll cry too, whether they're crying when they listen or they're crying before. They're like, I don't understand why I started crying. But then when I listened, I understood. It's just undeniable each and every time.
I just got that rush right when you were talking about
Yeah.
it. It just went right through, just right through. So beautiful. Okay, so I want you to share with everybody how they can connect with you.
Okay.
And then we will close out this one. And I just want everybody to know that once we close out this one, we're really not closing it out, because Debra and I are going to get on again in a couple of weeks, and we are going to do another session, which is about her next big experience in life and her next books. So let everybody know how they can reach you, Debra.
Okay, the best way is to go to my website at www.goldenmiracles.com. Don't forget the S, it's miracles. And so when you go to the website, there'll be podcasts that are free. It's called Spirit Chat. That's really what it is. Spirit comes through and they chat, and they give these uplifting conversations for you to listen to and to learn from. And then you could sign on right there to become a Facebook friend of mine. I'd love to, hear from you. I do post a lot of my validations and healings on my page, on my Facebook page. And then I also have a YouTube, and that YouTube, I usually try to put those on my Facebook page too for you to listen to. But if you went to a YouTube, you could just put in my name, Debra Martin, and that should pop up as well. But everything's accessible, just fill out the form, put a comment there. But remember, don't tell me what's going on in your life. It's like, do you want a reading or do you want a healing? And I try to make it affordable for everybody. So those that can't really, that don't have the means, I do these distant group sessions. And what it is there are people all around the world that join in a group session. It's like, what's the difference? The difference between a group and a private. Private's going to be more entailed of just you I'm talking to, but in a group as a whole, God guides those people. We're all holding the same intention for that miracle. So it becomes really beautiful, and each person's touched, and I have their picture, but the words come through as a group. So I always say, own each word as your own. So there's lots of different ways. I do meditation events. I just did one connecting with spirit like 2 days ago, I think it was. And oh my gosh, the feedback from that, and how I took them on a spiritual journey, and each person had this connection. I was like, and each person had a different landscape that they saw. So for me, as the healer and the mediumship part of it, I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for the people sharing their validations, right? So it takes you, the person, to play your role to let me know, so that I continue to do the work that I do, which I'm so blessed to do. So I hope to hear from you.
I'm so excited for everybody to be able to connect with you, and I'm really excited for us to connect the next time. Yeah, like I said, I think Debra and I met a couple of weeks ago, and we could have sat on the phone for a whole day probably. So someday we'll get together, maybe after COVID, and we can travel more. We'll spend some time and hang out together. So thank you everybody for listening. Keep an eye out for the next part 2 with Debra Martin. And Debra, thank you so much for the gift that you are in this world.
And you too, you're such a gift. We're all doing our own work in different ways, and you're healing people too. So thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for stopping by our Healing Family Grief channel, where grief can transform into peace, purpose, and even joy. That is the intention. So as host of the Healing Family Grief channel, my goal is to provide insight, inspiration, and hope for people who are grieving a deep loss, or for the people who want to provide support for those who are struggling on their grief journey. If you like what you hear, please like us, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel to hear more. Also, feel free to share any episodes that you feel could be helpful to someone you know. For more information about the Confident Grief Coach School, or to find a grief coach, or perhaps to order one of my free ebooks, please check out our website at www.healingfamilygrief.com.